Welcome everyone to Slow Art Friday. I'm Paige Taylor, the Learning and Engagement Assistant here at the Asheville Art Museum, and I'm happy to be joined today by Master Docent Sarah Reincke and Touring Docent Steve Bennett. Just a reminder that participants' microphones and video are muted by default, and you can turn your mics on in just a moment when Sarah and Steve begin our conversation. While you participate, please choose a quiet room and silent your devices. Try not to sit in front of a strong light source. Use headphones and microphone for best sound quality, and a desktop, laptop, or tablet for the best viewing quality. Please make sure your screen names include your first and last name or first name and last initial. In a few minutes, you'll be able to unmute your microphones and participate in our conversation, or you are welcome to type in questions and comments into our chat box. We are recording, so if you prefer not to be recorded, you're welcome to turn your video off and mute your microphone and enter questions and comments into the chat box. Each Friday at 12 p.m., docents lead virtual interactive conversations about a few artworks in our collection or special exhibitions. The goal is simple: slow down, discover the joy of looking at art, and talk about the experience with others. For today's program, Sarah and Steve will lead us in an interactive conversation about 4 artworks in our collection and special exhibitions. We'll spend about 15 minutes or so looking at each artwork. Steve and Sarah will allow us time to look at each artwork on our own, slowly, before leading a conversation about each one with questions. As participants, we encourage you to engage in dialogue with Sarah, Steve, myself, and each other. Are there any questions? Okay. You are welcome to unmute yourselves. And Sarah and Steve, what are we going to be talking about today?
Well, we have 4 very different pieces: a sculpture, a screen print, and 2 paintings. First of all, I just want to welcome everybody. And I'm so glad that you're here. I'm always excited to have these conversations. I say this every single time, but every single time it's true. I probably get more out of it than you all do. I always learn something. It is so nice to have these interactions, even though we're in Zoom. And I certainly cannot wait to see you in full 3D at the museum and doing the same thing that we're doing now. And it's more exciting to have the piece right in front of you. I always say, you know, the great thing about looking at artwork with other people is everybody has a different interpretation. And I revel in that. All the comments that you all make not only are valid, but they're really, really interesting. And I appreciate that so much. And as we all know, it's okay not to like an artwork. And it's okay to say that you don't like an artwork. Since I can't even draw stick people, I would never insult someone's talent. I cannot like it, but that doesn't have any reflection on the person's talent. And I think for children and adults, it's just always good to remember that you cannot like something from a personal point of view, but very much appreciate something from an artistic point of view. And that is a good place where I like to sit. When in the advertisement for this slow art, as always, we give you 3 questions that we'd like you to consider as you're preparing for today's discussion. And we will incorporate those 3 topics into the discussion of each piece. So for today, the questions that we wanted you to ponder is the mood of the artwork. What's the mood? And does the artwork evoke a sense of texture? And finally, how does the interplay of dark and light impact each artwork? So we'll be keeping that in mind as we move forward. So get comfortable in your seat, and let's look at the first slide. Have any of you seen this artwork in person? Yes. And I want to ask also if any of you have seen this artwork in a previous Slow Art Friday. Laurel, I thought, and Laurel, one of these things, I mean, almost all artworks, but this one in particular, the more you look at it, the more you see. And so it's always kind of nice to come back with a fresh eye and say, oh, wow, I didn't even notice that the first time I looked at it. That even happens when I'm reading novels sometimes. So let's take a nice long look at this. All sides, diagonal, up and down, just for about 10 seconds. It's a little hard to see because it's dark, but we will be able to show you another image. So where are your eyes drawn first? Like in the center, do you tend to go to a state? You know, when I see the map of the United States, my eyes are always going to Florida, just right away. But what do you guys see?
I see the Great Lakes. I see the white space that makes up the Great Lakes.
Oh, very good. And I like negative space. And negative space can be very important to several artworks. Anything else?
I see the fact that Hawaii and Alaska are not on the map.
That's right. They're not. They'd have to be little individual pieces.
Right. And having lived in Alaska for 16 years, I'm aware of that.
Oh, you get left out. That's no fun.
Right.
Can you, Paige, will you go ahead and flip it to the next slide? I think that people will be able to see what I mean. So when there's light on this, it looks a lot different, and we're able to see the smaller details easier. So can you see items in this artwork?
Absolutely. I mean, you see the texture, and especially in this particular slide, you can see windows or pieces of houses or tools, a lot of tools of different kinds of things that you would need to craft or create or build, things like that.
Yes. So the objects that you see, what meaning does that hold for you? Is it trying to tell us something? Is there a story in this?
I have always seen a pioneer kind of sense when I look at this piece and the building of the country.
The building of the country. I think that with all the tools that are a part of this artwork, I think that building is a very, very important piece of the artist's message. Do you feel that the artist has a message to this artwork, to this sculpture?
I think there's almost a certain universality to the United States because it's very three-dimensional, but it is not divided up into regions or into states. And there's just, the patterns appear to be random, but they're very, very well balanced throughout the map.
Yes, there is this sense of randomness, but yet you do see lines, you see shapes, you see patterns, but kind of juxtapositioned, it does feel random, and that I think is a nice aspect of this artwork. What does it give you a sense of mood?
Well, I just wanted to add that back to your first question, what do you see first? I almost immediately saw the items, the tools, the objects juxtaposed on top of the various states. Then I realized sort of what they were, but now I'm thinking, who used those tools? You know, how were those tools used, to build this country? And I find that, again, as you said, the more you look at this piece, you see more and more layers to the artist's vision.
And yes.
Oh, I just wanted to add to Sarah's comments, to your previous question. I see labor. When I look at the tools, I see labor, or labor-driven tools. I think sweat, and I see weight, both in the color of the art as well as the the tools. Metal is heavy, wood is heavy. I see some mental weight and physical weight. It seems to have an enormity to me.
Several people have talked about building, have talked about constructing. Let's talk a little bit more about that. Who's building? What was being constructed?
You asked about mood, and the mood that I get, partially because of the color, is somber.
It is somber. It's all, this is kind of backlit. So the one that you see in the museum is actually much darker. Because you're standing in front of it, all the different pieces still stand out a lot, but it is dark. The reason why I like this slide for this platform is it makes it a little bit easier for us to talk about, because we can see the detail. So do you think that this is talking about construction? What do you think is being constructed? Is it?
Can I say something?
Go ahead.
I think that it shows the input of the Black culture, or the Black laborers who built the foundation of America. When I first saw that in the museum, I didn't even know the title of it. And that was a feeling that came to me. I said, what an amazing piece. And it gave me that feeling that it represented a foundation that is not normally observed or recognized.
I agree with you, Sharon. It is talking about who built our country.
Well, and it wasn't just African, it wasn't just Black people. It was all along the western coast of the United States. A lot of Asian people were immigrated and brought into this country as laborers, and Hispanic people all the way south of the country. Yes.
And even white people.
Pardon me?
Even white people. Yes, African Americans, but everybody helped in creating this country. And the other thing that I see, maybe somber, but it is not sad. To me, there's a seriousness about it, but it even leans towards being there's a positiveness as opposed to a negativity.
I see strength. I see, you don't see any people, and as Terry and Sarah were talking about, you can envision the labor, you can envision the people working. You see all of the tools and the heaviness, as was mentioned, and you can just envision the people building, and I see a strength in the picture and the.
It is. I think it's very powerful, and it is reminding us of all the benefit that white society got from those that built our country. We always this. We've got to move on, but I wanted to. Normally we go to the slide. All right, take a good look at this picture, and then I'm going to ask Paige to go ahead and put up the label slide so that I can talk a little bit about what the artist has said with regard to this sculpture. So it is called My Big Black America. And the artist is a gentleman, Wesley Clark. And his artwork is aimed at getting people to consider all that surrounds racism, not only on a local level, but on a national level. And one of the ways that he has incorporated that thought is the wood. There are new pieces of wood, and then there are older pieces of wood. And he is speaking to the generations of African Americans and other minorities that have for years and years, hundreds, put their sweat equity into making this a great country. And then the newer wood, it reflects the newer generations of African Americans who continue to contribute significantly to our society. And I had always thought that was a very interesting facet of this work. Mr. Clark brings together mixed media wood assemblages, and he infuses social and political criticisms into his work, merging the historical with the contemporary to speak on issues faced by Blacks in America. And his artwork is meant to evoke reaction and to evoke conversation. This particular piece was also his thesis at George Washington University. And he wasn't happy with that piece, so he recreated it. And the sculpture that we have in Asheville Art Museum is his second rendition. And it's the very first piece that came into our new museum. The very first thing that we installed was this My Big Black America. And such a statement. I think we're very, very fortunate to have it. Okay, Paige, if we can go on to the next piece. Okay, quite different. But just take a nice long look. So what's the first emotion that you feel when you look at this artwork?
I feel curiosity. I didn't look at it before today, but sorry, Sarah, I didn't study it.
That's all right. That's good.
But part of me feels like it's someone under a bridge looking out on water. And, my eyes go to the lights first, and I can't decide whether it's someone in hiding or it's just an intimate evening. I'm curious because of the materials kind of look a little barbish or wire-ish down toward the bottom, and I can't tell if that's a welcoming fence out beyond telling me where safety is or confining me in. So and I definitely see the moon. I see the light. The light perhaps in this water. Sometimes it looks like a bridge and sometimes it looks like mere light. But anyway, so those are my initial curious thoughts.
Okay, and I think that perspective is one of the things that I first think of. Where am I in this picture? What am I seeing? Does anyone else have first reactions?
I definitely see the moonlight. I see the moon, and it looks to me to be water the light of the moon reflected on the water. I too was intrigued and interested by those fence pieces, both in the foreground and in the background, and the shape of them, and trying to ascertain like what that really means as well. It almost like weird looks like a hand in the front, like 3 fingers and a thumb, almost, yeah, as if it's.
Oh, these. Okay,
Yeah,
the vertical ones.
Like a hand. Just
It's funny. I felt like it was under a porch, because to me it was looking, maybe because of the fence. To me, it was a fence in the background, and I was looking on a landscape. Although, like you said, the reflection, water, but it could be even, somehow reflecting on land. And I went through that, where is it? But because of the fence, I decided it had to be a landscape, and it was like under a porch.
Yeah, and everyone has said fence. I just love that, because that is not necessarily what I was thinking.
I was thinking I was under trees. They felt like trees to me, or like in the shade of a tree, or just the shadow of a tree or something.
That's what I thought too, as far as the vertical dark foreground pieces. But go ahead.
Excuse me. I had a sense of silence.
Silence, peaceful. I think that it's a very, very peaceful. Does the water look like it's windy? Or does water kind of look like it's nice and calm?
Completely still.
Completely
still.
Yep.
What's interesting to me to look at this is how flat it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely flat.
That's why I keep thinking it's land.
In the foreground.
And even, the area towards the fence, maybe because the fence is there, it's like to me, it's a flat piece of land, because where would a fence be in water?
Or, a lake.
Completely wrong.
There could be another side. It could be, it could be an enclosed piece of water, or a dam. If that horizontal fence-like part of the artwork was not there, how would that affect the artwork? Would it be more interesting in your eyes, less interesting, easier to understand? Less. And what makes you say that?
At least for me, maybe the fact that it's there, and if I took it away, it would just be blank spaces, and it would not be very balanced.
And it does give the foreground, the middle ground, the background.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives our eyes something to break up that water. And think about looking over a big body of water anyway. And then all of a sudden a boat goes by, and it breaks up what you're looking at, and it gives it, as someone said, it's flat. I think it gives it a little bit more depth by
having a lot of depth of field.
Yes. So
what I saw it as a forest.
As a forest. Okay.
Yeah.
You know what I saw it as, now that I'm looking at it? And I must be obsessed with the Great Lakes in Chicago today, because it if you stand down under one of the many bridges that are there on Lake Michigan and look out towards Navy Pier,
Yes.
that is very much what that looks like.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
At least it reminds me of that for
Yep.
anyone who's been there. You know,
Yes. So, what about the color value? What can we say about the color value and how it affects the artwork?
I think it makes it look hazy and foggy and misty because the colors are not bright and they're not sharp and they're very muted. And I get just this, again, misty kind of feeling.
Good. Yeah, I think that it does have a soft, dreamy look to it to me. And we've mentioned this. Do we feel it's pretty well balanced?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
You feel it's balanced? And what makes you feel that way? Which particular aspects?
The trees in the
The trees?
There's a certain verticality, and then there's also the horizontal lines, the horizontal shore, well, whatever landscape factors in the front, but which are not very symmetrical, but they're curvy, and yet the back row is very straight and solid in a sense. Well, no, yeah, but just because it's straight and very the same thing across, where the bottom has a lot of variation.
So is this, if you could ask the artist a question, what might that be?
What was his or her concept?
His or her concept? Anything else?
feeling.
Pardon me?
What was he feeling?
What was he feeling? Right. What prompted this? Did the artist see something, or those are great questions. Is this a artwork that you'd like in your home?
You bet.
Yeah?
Maybe.
Yes.
Yeah, if I could afford it.
I would like to know if it was part of a series or just a one-time something that was drawn from reality or envision, or a part of a series. Like, could you make a triptych out of it, add pieces on either side of more of the scenery?
Yeah, that would be lovely. As far as I know, I have not seen other pieces of a series. If you could switch to the label page. So the art that's called Moonlit Cove, and it's a screen print. And it is Maud Gatewood, who is famous in a lot of places, but also very famous in North Carolina. It's not huge. It could fit in all of our homes. And Miss Gatewood, or as she would say, and has been quoted, just call me Maud. Mm-hmm. So we will do that. And Maud was born in Caswell County, and she was actually born in a house that in 1934 that is now the Caswell County Historical Association and the Richmond Miles History Museum. So her family has left a legacy here in North Carolina. Maud was a real individual. As a child, her dad was a sheriff, and she would follow him around to break up moonshine busts. And she would carry in a little holster a fake gun, walking alongside her dad, at like about age 8. And she had free run of the forest, and she was, she just really was her own person, a tomboy. And her mom really didn't like that. So they decided that she had to have piano lessons, and the mother only lasted 7 months because it was such a trial to get her to sit down or practice or not be mouthy. So she has been her own person for a very, very long time. And she experiments with a range of different styles, realism to abstract. Her media and subject matter include landscapes, architectures, forms, patterns, figures, very, very diverse. And she was especially adept at landscape and architectural drawings. And this, to me, it looks a little architectural. So that kind of resonated with me. She was also an activist, but more like in government. She was the first woman that was voted in 1976, the first woman that was voted as a member of the Caswell County Board of Commissions. And she served there for 4 years, advocating for economic development and land use within her own county. So she always had ties to North Carolina. A quote from Maud is, "I think you learn that life isn't straightforward. I think it's in the nature of the species to be a little evasive and covered. Ambiguity might be the heart of life as well as the heart of art." And I think that if you'll switch to that last slide. And she did love cats. So this is a building that is named after Maud Gatewood. It's the Studio Arts building in Greensboro, and it is a part of the UNC campus there. So, and what a lovely building. And the inside shots that I saw, it's very, very open on the inside, and certainly is an extension of her thought as to when she creates art, her own environment that she's interested in, and they tried to replicate that a little bit on the inside of this building. So I'm going to turn it over to Steve. Thank you so much for your questions and for your presence and for all that you add to this discussion. It just is such a pleasure to be with you.
Your pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. I am Steve Bennett, and I'm a touring docent at Asheville Art Museum. And let's pull up that next slide for artwork number 3. And let's just take a few moments to sort of silently examine this artwork and just let your eyes wander from top to bottom and left to right. And we'll begin our discussion soon.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
So what's going on in this artwork?
I'm intrigued by the figures. I just counted, there's 11 figures there, and by the positions of their bodies and their arms. So I'm not totally sure what it represents, but I'm definitely intrigued by the figures.
I'm also intrigued that the second row, there are no figures. I did the same thing that you did, Laurel, and counted the figures.
So there's a lot of attention to the figures and the number of figures or the absence of the figures.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you could name this artwork, what would you call it?
I'd call it repetition.
So you see repetition in this artwork. Very good point.
I sure do.
Mm-hmm.
And the figures kind of break that up a little bit, and they add something to it for sure, because it gives you something to find them. Just like the first speaker there was felt like counting them would be a good idea, finding all the little figures and seeing how many there were.
So you're saying that the figures had a great deal of interest. Very good point.
I wanted to add something. The way that it's lined up, it looks like rows of something. It's like a intentional pattern. Besides the repetition, it seems intentional, either by the artist or in reality.
It looks to me like a hotel the side of a hotel where the rooms, the balconies are being separated by, now my silent partner here beside me wants to say he thinks it looks like a Christmas tree farm.
Christmas tree farm. Okay, well, actually, you mentioned pattern, the word pattern, and that's it's what we call a principle of design. It's one of 7 different design principles, but it's repetition. It's shapes, lines, and colors, and usually it's 2-dimensional, but it gives a decorative surface almost to any artwork where you find that. Do you notice other patterns in this artwork?
I do. If you count the number of trees or whatever those are, you have 8, 9, 8, 9, 8. Old math teacher.
And if you count the negative space on each tree,
Okay.
there's 8 on every tree.
And they're all in the same place.
Just about.
Very interesting.
And
Okay,
yet
well, this is a lot of different
Feel
shapes
to
and lines. Yeah.
It's not, to me, it's not particularly flat. It's as if the brown area, it's as if it were at the underside of the terrace, say, above it, and it receded back, it receded. And the white space came forward. And the figures are all in the white spaces.
There's also 4 figures in the corner, or 1 figure in each of the corners.
That's right.
And I'm not sure, some of it is repeated where the figures have their arms up in that fashion. So
One thing that bothers me about this in a way is that I can't get any.
If you look at the bottom row,
are we talking? Yeah.
there's a,
Sharon, do you want to finish that thought? And then Billy, you can add to that.
Yeah, I was saying, I think perspective kind of bothers me on this. I don't have any distance. I see it as very flat in a way. So I could look at it and say, gee, it looks like shelving. Like I think what someone was trying to say, it looks like balconies maybe on the side of the hill. And I see almost like a shadow underneath each of the brown pieces. So perhaps that could be it. But then I was wondering if it's plant-like. Should we be trying to see this as a field where all these plants are planted in rows?
Okay, so you're seeing almost an agricultural aspect here.
Well, if they're plants, which
Yes,
kind of has a plant feeling.
right.
And Billy, did you want to add?
I think my internet is cutting out, so I may not be able to complete my thought here. But for example, if you look at the bottom row, what appears to be a male figure, I would call a male figure, the 3rd figure from the left, is repeated once, maybe twice on the top row.
And here.
And then
There.
it's not a real repetition, but it's close to it in the middle row on the far left-hand side.
Is this the figure you're mentioning?
Yeah.
So this figure that has like a bluish, purplish, bluish kind of color inside the chest?
At the top there. So some of them are repeated and some of them aren't.
Well, this artwork does also illustrate another principle of design we talk about a lot. It's called rhythm. It's kind of a sense of visual movement. And this is achieved by having lots of repetition of elements in an artwork. And we certainly got that here. He repeats a lot of organic shapes like the plants or trees. Organic shapes are irregular, they're uneven, they're not precise. And the people are not precise here either. They're organic shapes, but every one is just a little different. Can you find any other examples of rhythm in this artwork?
The horizontal lines.
Right.
You know, the brown, the white, the brown, the white, the brown, the white, the brown. And to me, maybe because of the way that they, I see the depth of field and the fact that the trees seem to come forward as the brown lines, which, you know, we have said seem to be like the underside of maybe a balcony, recede.
Well, and there's two shades of brown, but the one that is right at the base of all of the trees and people is the same shade all the way through, and it breaks it up a little bit for me between the two browns. I mean, I think without that lighter shade of brown, my eyes wouldn't be drawn to the trees as much as they are.
I think what you're bringing up is perhaps the interplay of darkness and light here. And there are a lot of different shades used here. And so I think that's what he achieves when he is doing this. And, you know, this is, it's a painting, you know, there in the museum that you can view in person, but it may be two-dimensional, but it doesn't feel that way when you look at it this way because of his use of light and darkness. And I think you've made some really good points on that. Paige, could you move to the next slide? Today, we've been discussing a painting created in 1986 by Roger Brown. And it has a very interesting title, Plants That Glow in the Dark, Tra-La. So there you have it. It's 48 inches by 72 inches. And it was created by applying oil paints to phosphorescent canvas. Does anyone know what phosphorescent canvas means?
It glows.
Exactly. It's a canvas that actually glows in the dark. And if we were present in the museum gallery right now and someone turned out the lights, the figures on the painting would really glow in the dark. Very, very cool.
Yeah, right. I would pay for that. I have never seen it glow, and it's like I want a night in the museum.
I think it would be really terrific. But Roger Brown was an American artist who lived from 1941 to 1997. And he was born in a small town in Alabama, Hamilton. I've never heard of this town, but he was influenced by deep ties to American South. And his appreciation of vernacular material culture. So what do I mean by that? Early in his life, he began to nurture an interest in folk art and just all sorts of handmade functional objects. And he was always a lifetime champion for validity of artistic objects such as these. He was also influenced by comics, theater architecture, Art Deco, and the Machine Age. So he left Alabama and attended the School of Art Institute in Chicago. And he's known as what we call one of the Chicago Imagists. And it's a number of groups that emerged from that particular school after World War II. And they were influenced by surrealism, and they also drew on references outside of fine art, such as comics, cartoons, and popular culture. And I can certainly see aspects of that in this particular artwork we've looked at today. His subjects were also dealing with American culture, especially after World War II, urban isolation, alienation, natural disasters, human tragedy, but frequently with a wry political tone. He was also a gay artist, and he was a gay activist in later years of his life. And some of his artworks were representative of that. But all in all, it's a hybrid style that he created. I think it's very different from anything else we've seen today. Combination of flattened, cartoonish-like images, and lots of skyscrapers and undulating hills and agitated citizens. Roger Brown died in Atlanta, Georgia in 1997. Okay, let's move on to the next artwork, our fourth and final artwork today. And again, let's just take some time to view this artwork silently and look it over from side to side and up to down, and we'll talk here in just a minute. So what's going on in this particular artwork today?
It looks like a snowy landscape scene, and it just, the colors are really nice. I think it's very pleasing of the combination of the various purples and pinks and blues and yellows and greens and so many colors. And I see calm, but yet I see a little movement in the trees, and there's no people, there's no animals, but it's just like a very serene, pretty picture.
Looks like an impression in the impressionist style.
Right, so you see some impressionists.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and Lauren, you had mentioned that it almost has a seasonal quality to it.
Yes, the trees are barren and in the front on the left, and the white to me represents snow, and I do see maybe a little water possibly, might be frozen, so.
So you see some water in the foreground then of this painting. Okay, and even though it appears to be in the dead of winter, there's still a lot of color here, very inviting landscape. Would you say that the colors used are warm colors or cool colors? And why would you say that? Anybody?
Well, they're pastels. I see them as pastels. So the pink is essentially a warm color, or and the blues are cool colors. So there's a real combination of warm and cool. The gold, whatever this, and I almost at first thought it was a tree.
It is.
And maybe it is on the right-hand side, center right-hand, center right-hand side. So there's, I see a combination of
Seasons.
of warm colors, cool colors, horizontals, diagonals. This painting has it all.
You know,
It's like there's a bird up there in the tree.
right here.
Yeah,
Dark
yes.
part. Oh, this bird. Yep. So I get a real mix, like a snow in September, where some trees, and you talk about the mix of the cold and the warm and the cool colors. Some trees still have leaves on it. It's snowed. It's not quite winter. It's not any longer autumn. I kind of agree. I think that it's a real mix.
there's like green grass here next to what looks like a stream to me. It looks like patches of green grass.
Is this the area you're mentioning? These greens along what could be a pool of water?
I'm
And
thinking
over
it could
by
be
the
a
tree there.
spring snowstorm.
Yeah.
So here again, at this particular artwork, the interplay of lightness and darkness has a big impact. And that's something we call in the art world, it's the elements of art includes value. So value is the color determination that we find in this artwork. Another thing, though, that's I think pretty important in this artwork, especially if you view it in person, is texture. How things feel or how they appear to feel. And when you touch something, you can experience the actual texture. We're not saying that you should touch the paintings, but we perceive this through touch or vision. So it's also literally present, though, in some artworks. And you can see brush marks. Can anyone ever see brush marks in this particular painting just on the image?
I don't think I see brush marks, but the thing that occurred to me when I first looked at this was so many artists will go out on plein air and paint something in watercolor, usually or very swiftly, to get ideas of what the landscape looked like, what the colorations were, that kind of thing, in order to take it back to a studio and make a more either more formal painting or to complete the painting back in their studio. And that's kind of the impression that it gives me, that this is something that was done very quickly and tried to be impressionistic, just to get the ideas and carry them with you.
It seems that the colors, when you said the values, that they're more in the mid-tones, with the exception of the dark streaks doing as branches and shadows on the trees or on the ground, but they're very sparsely, but yet specifically placed.
I like the rocks in the front. I think the rocks in the front there, and I can see different shades of the various colors. It's not just the colors themselves, but there's multiple shades of each color, which is very interesting because it also looks not to be flat, almost three-dimensional, like I could walk through there or around the little ice thing and through the snow and over the rocks and head towards the mountains.
That's a great comment. It kind of illustrates another principle of design that we talk about, and that's proportion, the relationship of different parts of the painting to other parts, or different images that you see in the artwork itself. Can anyone make a comment on the use of proportion in this particular artwork?
Everything is very proportional, but what I've also noticed is, again, I have a thing with depth of field, and there is definitely a strong sense of distance in this painting.
And
it's not, does not have a flat look.
My eyes are drawn to that middle ground, that bit of blue that looks to be, yes. I keep staring at it like, what is that? Is that a tent? What?
It almost looks like a figure of someone running.
But it certainly serves, for me, it brought my eyes right to the middle ground. And then I came out from there. And I thought that was interesting.
These are all good points. Emphasis is something that the artist will use to draw your eye to a particular area. In your opinion, anybody here, where is the true emphasis here? What's the main emphasis of this artwork?
The tree on the right with the bird in it.
The tree, right. Any others?
The black line on the tree on the left.
Okay, the use of the dark there draws your eyes to that part of the painting. Okay. Okay. Any other thoughts on this artwork? Okay, Paige, would you please show the photograph of Pierre Dora now? We've been discussing a painting created around 1935 by the artist Pierre Dora. And title of this artwork is Hayes Creek in the Snow, 20 inches by 26 inches. It's oil on canvas. And this artist was extremely interesting to me. There's another Southern connection here, which I'll refer to in a minute, but he was born in Menorca, Spain, and raised in Barcelona. But he did study later in Paris. And his godfather was none other than the famed cellist Pablo Casals. And throughout his life, he spent many summers in France, but he died an American citizen in Virginia in 1976. He studied with several teachers, but probably his most notable teacher was Jose Ruiz, and that just happened to be Pablo Picasso's father. So he had some very notable teachers in his past, and he was precocious. When he was 14 years old, he set up his own studio, and he sold his first painting at his inaugural exhibition to a Catalan artist there who said it reminded him of Paul Cézanne's work. But later on, in 1927, he met Louise Blair of Richmond, Virginia, who just happened to be studying art in Paris. And they got married in 1928. And they moved to a really old village in France. and began restoring a 13th century farmhouse there. This is a project that continued most of their lives. Their only child, Martha, was born there in 1930. Paige, could you show the picture of Martha Dora, please? This is Martha at 13 by Pierre Dora, and very different style from what we've been discussing with the other artwork. In 1929 and 1930, Dora helped organize an artist group called the Cercle et Carré, which means the circle and square, which promoted geometric construction and abstraction in opposition to surrealism. He was ignored by the French press, but that group is now considered to be one of the great influencers in the history of modern art. So Dora, with his family, made their first trip to the US in 1934. And while he was there, he painted a large number of Virginia landscapes. And most of those landscapes were not sold here in the States, but they were sold later in Barcelona. I thought that was very interesting. And later, though, they established a permanent residence in Virginia. And Pierre and Martha both became naturalized US citizens in 1943. Following that, he taught in Lynchburg, Virginia at Lynchburg College for 1 year, but then later on he taught many years at Randolph-Macon Women's College. He believed painting, like architecture, had to tend toward a greater simplicity and rely more on structural elements. So in Catalonia, he would not push his images to abstraction, but instead he would retain essential elements of a scene, emphasizing underlying geometry, etc. He never hired a dealer, though, like a lot of painters would do, to search out buyers and to gain notoriety for his work. He was quoted as saying, "I've never wanted money or fame or the things of this world, just to find a way to paint." So for that reason, his name today is less well known than the quality of his output really warrants. Okay, today we have reviewed 4 very different artworks that emphasize and use values or darkness and lightness to evoke and communicate feelings and to elicit the reactions from you all, the viewers. Each artist used colors, both dark and light, warm and cool, in their own unique ways. So if any of you could choose any of these 4 artworks to take home with you today, which one would you choose?
I would take the landscape, the last one that we looked at with the snow and the mountains and the colors. The others are intriguing and different in texture, and I can only imagine the glowing one, but I would say the last one would be my selection.
Anybody else?
I would too, but I'd also like the map.
Yeah, we like the map here too. You need a wall big enough to install it.
I think the last painting is, I would think, almost the most universally liked, and that it could fit into many different types of homes. But I also do like the one with the glowing trees.
That's my choice. The Moonlight Cove print is wonderful.
I like Moonlit Cove. That could go on my wall in a heartbeat.
That's Moonlit Cove. Yeah, that is nice.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone for attending Slow Art Fridays again today, and it's just been a real pleasure talking with each of you. I hope that you'll consider attending future ones, and I think Paige is going to let us know about our next presentation.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Steve. That was a wonderful conversation that you led us through, and thank you all for joining us today and being a part of this conversation. Yes, next week's Slow Art Friday on May 14th, we will have our docent Sylvie Horvath leading us in a conversation with the theme of Where Have All the People Gone? So I hope that you'll join us for that. And look out for the email that I'll be sending out in a few minutes with the link for registering for next week. All right, thank you all and have a wonderful week. Hope to see you next Friday.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
y'all. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Great conversation.